My name is Colin Wynd, and today I'm going to talk about the three popular DevOps anti-patterns. So the reason we're talking about this is over the past 10, 15 years, I've talked to lots of organizations about DevOps and how they're getting to DevOps. And there's several things that I've noticed that are really anti-patterns to that. And so I really want to start talking about these and if you actually encounter them, how you actually get out of these anti-patterns. And that will really help you with your migration towards DevOps. So anyway, people always ask me, what is DevOps? And, I think it's always good to have a definition. I've got a slightly different definition that really helps a lot of executives understand DevOps. It's really, the phrase I have is the ability to change a line of code and get it to production that same day with confidence. And I think the piece about it that's critical is with confidence. And that means that, you got to have the right tooling and the right processes in place to be able to move a line of code and be able to do the right levels of scans, such as security scanning, such as code quality, such as verifying your open source compliance, you don't have any vulnerabilities in that, even checking your open source license to make sure that it adheres with what you're trying to do with the overall application that you're deploying. Also means that you have to basically tightly integrate what the developers are doing with what information security needs and what operations needs. Right? No much point in getting it to dev or QC. The whole point is to get it to production. And so that's my definition, and that kind of frames what I'm trying to achieve and what we're trying to achieve with DevOps. And it's a slightly different definition, but hopefully that helps, with the overall goal with why people are actually migrating to DevOps. So what is an anti-pattern? So there's lots of different types of anti-patterns. You see this in application development quite a lot. There's definitely things that people have done in a consistent fashion that basically look attractive initially, but in the long term, actually, do quite a bit of harm or actually cause more work than work. And probably the one I love talking about is people copy and paste code, right? So you might have a simple example, and the one I love talking about is logging. So you might be able to do some custom logging in this one application, and then you start working on a second application, and what you'll do is, well, that was pretty good code, let me just copy it, and I'll start modifying it in the second application. And, working on a third application, yeah, I'll just copy it from the second application. Yeah, I made some mods, but I'll copy into this third application, and that'll be really good. Now, all of a sudden, right, a year later, or 2 years later, you might have 100 applications. And what I've found is you'll actually end up having more than 100 copies of this because somebody will have made a copy within one module of a code. It might be the same application, but you might end up having 2 or 3 versions in that same application of just logging. And this is just logging. It could be anything. And so, really the anti-pattern is there. Don't copy and paste, create a module, create a library, and basically use the library. So when you update the library and the library, all of the applications either get the new version whenever they recompile, and they can decide what they want to do, as well as any new features that you put in. All of the applications can benefit at minimal cost. And that's a good example of an anti-pattern in technology. But the same thing also happens in processes. And also, there's anti-patterns with how people are organized. And this is what I want to talk about. And basically what you want to do is, even though it might seem attractive initially to go and adhere to or leverage that anti-pattern, in the long run, actually hurts you. And so the idea is to try and avoid these anti-patterns. And there's lots of them. I'm just going to talk today about kind of the top 3 anti-patterns that I've seen in the last 10, 15 years. So what are these? And I'm just going to quickly go through them, and then I'm going to do a bit more deep dive. So basically, if your team is called DevOps, then you're probably not doing DevOps. And this is what I see quite frequently is a lot of organizations have DevOps teams that are actually doing DevOps. But what I see even more is actually people who have basically created DevOps teams And most recently, it tends to be the tooling team that actually implements CI/CD is actually known as the DevOps team. But they're not really doing DevOps. They're just a support organization for the application development teams who are actually supposed to be doing the DevOps. Number two, you need to be doing Agile to be able to do DevOps. And this is really for a lot of the companies that either have like an iterative model such as RUP or waterfall-based models who basically are getting pressure to suddenly do DevOps. And I'm saying don't do that jump from waterfall straight to DevOps, do the jump from waterfall into Agile and then to DevOps. And basically the third one is you're not doing DevOps if you're not going to production. And I have lots of conversations all across the US about companies who are claiming to do DevOps, but they don't actually get to production. They do DevOps to a dev or a QC or a UAT environment, but it's a whole different process and a whole different team that actually gets the software into production. So I'm going to talk about these three in a bit more detail. So if your team is called DevOps, you're probably not doing DevOps. And this is the typical model on the left-hand side, right? You have a development organization, you have an ops organization, and basically they need to work together in very logical teams, really as a partnership. And really, it's this integrated team consisting of all the resources, right? Consisting of developers and operations, information security. It's really focused on creating the business value, right? It's really getting the business value